Welcome to the stories that shape our community. My name is Trevor Moore, and I'll be your host in this Southeast Alberta podcast series where we explore the importance of putting local first and the power positive impact has on shaping our communities. These episodes are about giving listeners a backstage pass as we explore the why behind these great local business stories. There's no one-size-fits-all approach in business, and these journeys are as unique as the people themselves. Our local guests will highlight the challenges, solutions, and philosophies they've employed to overcome adversity, showcase resilience, and have a positive and lasting impact in our community now and well into the future. When it comes to a business, it is often like an art. It requires some creativity, and nobody nails business and creativity as a blend better than Maureen Newton with Inspire Cafe and Inspire Art Studio here with us today. Welcome, Maureen. Maureen Newton, super excited to have you here today. On a summer day, we're sitting and enjoying some coffee downtown. I love this place. We could go in a million directions talking about your operation. I've seen the back art side in operation. I've done a paint night there myself. My kids did summer camps here.
Yes.
And I've had coffee in this side before as well. Spectacular place. Maureen, take me through your history here. How do we get to today? What is the Coles Notes of Inspire Cafe?
Well, for a long time, I taught art classes and worked as an artist, and I kind of had this dream, like pretty much every artist that I know of, having their own studio and, selling their art. So I kind of started there, and I was really interested in this part of where we are downtown, Medicine Hat, so 2nd Street, which at the time was quite derelict. So I had done the self-employment training program at Entrecourt. And I started there, and I found a little spot actually right next door to Inspire Cafe. And I remember it was April 1st, and took my family and everyone to check out the spot. And they thought it was an April Fool's joke. Yes, it was so bad. And we ended up fixing it up. So I had my studio next door upstairs for a couple of years. And then I kept eyeing up this location, which was in pretty rough shape too. And so after a couple years, I thought, what, I think we need to expand a little bit. And I was looking for more space for my classes and things like that. And I conned my sister, Louise, into opening the cafe with me. So we always joke, I told her that she'd be making a lot of dough if she went to go with me. But
I love the pun.
Cinnamon buns, not not a lot of money. But so 2011, we opened the cafe, and we really wanted to contribute. Like, we have real love for our downtown, and we wanted to contribute to the development of that. Like, I always felt so sad that this little area kind of was sitting in such disrepair for so long. And so I grew up just up the street from here on 2nd Street, and so this was kind of like our stomping grounds.
Yeah. And
even the red tables and chairs, that kind of comes from childhood memories of like the I'm trying to think, Woolworths counter that had the red chairs.
See, I'm colorblind, so I have to take your word on that one. But
yeah, so there was a place that I think it was Woolworths, where they had the lunch counter, and we, particularly Louise, has a lot of affection sitting for that, sitting at the counter there. And so we kind of wanted to bring a lot of our childhood memories of what we loved about downtown.
Yep.
And try to kind of bring that back a little bit. And then this building is just amazing. Like, I just love it. Like, it was built in 1901, so you get a lot of that history and, of downtown all wrapped up in, the evolution of a space. And
it is a pretty cool location, right? And I love the way there's a lot of, I don't know what the word I would use would be, nostalgia maybe in the building. Is that a fair way to say it? Like, and I want to go into this a little bit more, because you talked about, your pull down here. Would it be fair to say was more with your heart than with your head for the first little bit, because you fell in love with downtown? How important is that as an entrepreneur when you're jumping in and you're trying to start something? Obviously, we have to have an idea and we have to have our mind in the equation. But just if someone's out there listening and wanted to get into business, how important is it for them to follow their heart?
Well, for me, I can't kind of separate the two. Like, I have to do something that I really love. And I know there's lots of people that are very successful where, they'll buy something like a business or whatever that maybe they're not, super emotionally connected to, but, it's very successful for them. And I think for a lot of people that really works. But for me, it's like, it's important to celebrate those things that I love about my community and such, so I don't know if it's always the smartest thing, but
entrepreneurship in general, or going that route. It's funny. Every entrepreneur I talk to talks about, sometimes it looks a lot more graceful on the outside than it does the inside.
Yeah,
and I see you nodding, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It is filled sometimes with complete terror. And then the next day you feel like you're winning at life. And then the next day you're like, okay, it's average. And then you feel like you're falling apart again. And then you're back into it. Entrepreneurship's a roller coaster, isn't it?
It really is. And I mean, from the very beginning, like when we initially opened the cafe in 2011, then, and we sort of knew this was going to happen, but really, what does it mean? Like we found out, there was going to be all the infrastructure changes, which is super important and needed to be done. But now they're saying, we were only open a couple months. Now we're going to shut off complete access to your business and all of these things. And you're like, how are we going to deal with this? And you don't really know what to expect. And then, it can be way worse than anything you could possibly imagine. You're trying to figure that out. And I think if you can stick it out, it makes you stronger in a lot of ways. Like even the pandemic, I think the strange blessing for a lot of businesses is it helped you again to streamline. Like I know I've talked to a lot of people, and it's like you got rid of a lot of staffing things, or you were doing things just because you always did them, and then you're like, why are we doing this? Now we don't have to do this, and we haven't been doing it for a period of time. Like we really don't need to be spending the money on that or whatever. So it really was a positive thing in a weird way.
It's funny you say that, and it's almost everybody that I talk to almost has that hushed tone about talking about the positives to come out of COVID. And I get it, because in some respects, I mean, I fully appreciate that it's been devastating for a lot of pieces and a lot of people and a lot of businesses and a lot of lives. And sometimes it's hard to find things to celebrate about it. And even though some things have been good to come out of it, it's hard to really get out there and push that, because you almost feel like
there's tragedy for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly, right? I call it like survivor's guilt, right? That the plane that crashes and the one person survives and they struggle feeling guilty being the survivor. Do you know what I mean? And it's hard for them to celebrate and enjoy their life because all the other people didn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I almost find that has happened through COVID a little bit. It's tough to publicly celebrate the good things. And sometimes, you're just trying to find the positive, but it feels a little awkward to find the positive sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I know a lot of people tease us because with kind of the hurdles and struggles that we faced here with our business, when the pandemic kind of hit and then we had to close down all the stuff, customers would tease us about, oh, now you just need the plague of locusts, and we probably got every base covered of what's happened. But, and it was scary at first, like with, the closures for the restaurant, because we were like, okay, we're not known for takeout and we don't do skip the dishes and all of these things. So how are we going to kind of manage this? And then, we started making these little meat pies and things like that. And it turned out to be a hugely, successful thing. And we're still doing them. Louise makes them here. And, we kind of figured out a way to keep going and spin things. And it kind of for us wasn't as tragic at first, because when initially we were like, okay, do we just close the doors and give up here, or do we keep going? And interestingly enough, so now we have some hindsight. Like we've been open for 11 years now, and so we look back and all of these things and ups and downs and roller coasters and other businesses and all the things that you think are going to be horrible and they turn out to be great, or vice versa. And I've never seen downtown so busy as the last probably 2 years, but certainly this summer. Just many people walking around.
And that's awesome to see, because our downtown is truly amazing. Like, it's funny because you take our very first episode, ironically, in this podcast series was with IXL Brick Plant. And, it opened my eyes to the things that were in front of me that I wasn't seeing. Like I've lived here long enough, I don't see the brick downtown anymore. I just see buildings again. Yeah. Until you have somebody from out of town come and they're like, this is beautiful down here.
Yes.
It's amazing how much we become blind to the glory right in front of us. Like, our downtown is amazing. It is beautiful. There's so much, some of the old buildings are just so beautiful. But it's neat to see it change and grow down here, isn't it? I want to go back to one of the things that, obviously as an artist, I would venture a guess, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that creativity is a strong point for
Yes.
you. How important is that creative thinking, or was that creative thinking when you're going through challenges like you were? Because it requires some creative solutions. Sometimes we get so stuck in the box and seeing it a certain way. Has it helped you to be that creative thinker, do you think, to get through some of those adverse times?
Absolutely. I think creative thinking is essential, especially, when, say, the business is shut down and you can kind of sit and cry with your head in your hands, or you can kind of get busy and get creative in those quiet times, or when ideas start to flow. Anyway, for me, and, I had a lot of ideas of revamping things and how can I market something else, or how can we vamp our brand, or change things up. Like one little thing, while we were closed to customers, I painted and cleaned and absolutely everything, got new branding for our sign. And it's interesting because a lot of people have stopped and come in because they think it's a new place now, because we just changed some of our signage and rethought that, and during that time period, which I found fascinating. I'm thinking, geez, I should have changed that a long time ago. But
COVID gave me the time to do the things I always blamed not having enough time to do on, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you have time to maybe explore those new things. The key is to get that fear out of the way, isn't it? You have a moment where you have to acknowledge and address the challenge at hand, but then you have to flip your thinking to solution, not problem. And there's that finding that tipping point. And if you don't find that tipping point soon enough, sometimes you can find yourself victimized, so to speak, in your mindset with where you're at. It can be a challenge, can't it?
Yeah, and just give up. Like, what's the point in continuing? And I mean, like we talked earlier, a lot of businesses have gone out. Like, bankruptcies are increasing right now, and all of that. So there's but we've just managed to figure out a way to keep going, which is pretty exciting, really.
Well, and that's all you can do, right? One step at a time, one foot forward, and kind of move with it. And it's great to see. Take me back through Inspire. What's in the name?
Well, originally when I was looking for locations, there was a church. It was torn down, and over on I'm trying to think of which church it was now, but it was over on North Railway. And I was looking for locations, and I was over there, and I was like, Inspire. I was looking at the spire, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, this would be great. Of course, I was looking at all the dumpy places I could afford, right? And they ended up tearing it down, but I thought, Inspire, that's perfect, because the phrase Inspire actually means in spirit, which is the creative source. Like, that's what that means.
Interesting.
Yeah. So when somebody is inspired, that spirit is flowing through them, and that's where creativity comes from. So I thought that would be perfect. So originally I had called the studio Inspire Studio and Gallery. And then when we opened the cafe, we actually deliberated, should we call it that? And we decided to go with that name. And I think it's been, even like I mentioned, the red tables and chairs, we just did that. Mostly it's Louise's favorite color, and her memory of downtown and all of that. And then it became a real signifier, because we weren't thinking it through to that degree that people would call it, that place with all the red tables and chairs, and it kind of became a branding opportunity that way. And originally in our logo, I had used this little swirl, and eventually in our Inspire Cafe logo, we flipped the swirl so it looked like the steam coming out of the cup, and so we tried to use those little things. So we thought it's kind of a perfect name for that creative element, right?
Yeah, it really, I think it really resonates well with it all. And when you come in here and you see the integration of it's almost, where does art studio end and where does coffee shop begin?
Yeah,
Cafe,
exactly,
right? Like you see it sort of blend back and forth through. And take me through, amalgamating sort of the two pieces, because there's two different scenarios there, and sometimes there's an important piece there. It sounds simple to the outside looking in to just amalgamate operations or bring things together, but there's a lot more art to it sometimes than we want to believe, isn't there? To try to bring things together and keep them congruent.
Yeah, and I think it's strange combination in a sense, like having the studio first, and then when we consulted with Entrecourt and got some guidance when we were going to open the cafe, and they said, so you're going to take a studio gallery that has like a, I can't remember what the percentage was, but something like a 50% failure rate. and now you're going to add a cafe to it that has like an 80% failure rate. Is this a good idea? And I'm like, yes, I think it is. So I think we wanted it to be a unique experience. And again, like you mentioned about the brick buildings downtown, when you're from here, you don't really appreciate some unique things. And I remember when I was traveling and I went to Edinburgh, for example. I went to Edinburgh Castle, and along the Royal Mile or Walk, whatever it's called, there was this little cafe there, and it had, it was an funky little place. And I remember that as clearly as I do remember the castle. And I thought, Medicine Hat can have that too. Like, people were, when I was starting the business, people were very much like, this will not work in Medicine Hat. People will not like this in Medicine Hat. And I think that was true to a point. Like, I was surprised at how violently people kind of reacted, like, something different. Like, but now we're in business, 10 years on, it's a very positive response, I think. Like, we have such a interconnection spider web in the community, like with Medelta and the Esplanade. The Tourist Information Center is hugely supportive, and so we get referred from those people from all angles, and you're like, go to Inspire. It's a really unique experience. And then visitors, when they come, they are looking for a local flavor of what the city's about. So the art, the music, all the the food. We try to do as many local connections as we can. And
it's interesting, which obviously to bring this together, you had to really dial in who your niche was, who you were targeting, right?
Yes.
And if you listen too loud to the people on the outside of your niche, you start to think you've missed it. But the reality is, it's about listening to the right people, isn't it?
Well, and I think seeing something that other people aren't aware is there. Like, there is creative tourism. Mm-hmm. Like, as much as I know, there's sports tourism and people will travel or whatever, I am perfectly aware that there is a creative, artistic tourism. And, if it's not in your community, you can create it, and people will still come and look for that, right?
Yeah.
And I do agree it's not as great as, say, sports tourism or whatever, but it is much bigger than I think people realize.
Yes.
And I mean, just this summer we have seen so many tourists. Like, it just every summer gets more and more and more. And I was commenting to someone, there's so many American tourists right now coming through Inspire. Mm-hmm. Obviously many of them get referred from the Tourist Information Center or what have you, but it's really incredible to see. And they're like, wow, Medicine Hat is such a creative place. And I'm like, what you see here in Inspire is just like barely scratching the surface. Like, there are so many artists. And again, because I'm in that world, I'm aware of it. And I just don't think, if you're not in that world, even local musicians, there are so many wonderful musicians. And
yeah, there is, right? It's an industry that once you see it, you can't unsee it. But sometimes you don't see it right away.
Right.
It's there, and you look at a lot of the things we have. I mean, even you look at the arts and just downtown with the Esplanade being down here. Creative center, right? And the facility is just beautiful, and it brings in the arts in a lot of ways. And it's a great sort of modernization on the far end of downtown and brings everything together. But we do have this big art underground here, and I love it. I think it's great that it comes together and comes to the forefront. And like you said, it's tourism. It's different tourism than sports tourism.
Yeah.
But it's tourism.
Oh, absolutely.
It's tourism.
Well, I mean, and just look at the festival. We had July 9th. We had the Art in Motion. So the Esplanade, Candace at the Esplanade, was the primary organizer of this, but it was connected with the chamber and what have you. And they piggybacked onto Mural Fest, which had happened. Jeff Boring organizing that. And they did a mural just right across the street here from Inspire this year, which was so fun to watch. And I think artists are very encouraging and interested in other artists and such, because a lot of people think, well, why would you buy another artist's work when you can do it yourself? And it's really not about that. I mean, artists are the biggest buyers of art, I find. But it was fascinating to me to watch Jairus, the young mural artist across the street, doing it. It was such a treat. And I was looking at it as I was going over to my van in the parking lot, and I was like, God, I love that mural. It's just so terrific. Yep. But anyway, that is another component that's developing in the city. I think that's bringing a tourism element, because I see so many people that meander around and are actually touring the murals and different things. But that festival was so incredible to see. There were so many people downtown, and for, just walking and exploring, and artists set up. And, I hope that becomes a thing regularly throughout the summer. It's a lot of work. Like, people say, oh, you should do this every weekend. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No, because you don't see all the work that goes into
Yes.
these things. When you just come and enjoy it. But
it's a lot of work that goes into an event of any type or any stature to any degree. It is not as simple as having an idea. It begins at the idea, but it's a lot more than that, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
sure.
nice to see the energy into downtown, right?
Oh, yeah.
And go from there. Take me through, obviously we've talked a little bit about, you've gone through some stuff with some construction challenges downtown, which has limited some of the access. And we've gone through COVID. And as an entrepreneur out there that's listening, and they're concerned, or maybe they're facing their first, because I will say first, because anybody that's been in entrepreneurship long enough will tell you there's always the next challenge. So when I say the first, I mean, it is maybe just their first, but they may be panicking. They may be wondering, what kind of things would you suggest as a new entrepreneur that, are incredibly important when facing that adversity, when looking at that challenge? What kind of things would you suggest were important for you and your team here to get through some of these challenges?
Well, I remember I did mention to my sister Louise when the pandemic happened, and I commented that I felt sorry for businesses where that was going to be their first ordeal, because it would seem very much like traumatic in the end. Like I said, it was for a lot of people, and the end of the world.
Yeah.
But we were a little bit like, oh, okay, this now, like another thing, because we certainly overcome some challenges before. But I remember with the road closure, the very first one, I did literally feel like I was going to have a heart attack, at that time with, financial issues are so hard on you physically. And I did feel like I was going to have a heart attack. But, if you can remind yourself about the stress, that it's probably not as bad as you're thinking it's going to be. And there's a lot of resources out there, people that, can and will help you. And again, like I've mentioned Entrecore before, but they've been a huge support and help, going and asking other people what to do. And I've also been quite upfront. Like I've people that you owe money to, or loans, or I have found even Canada Revenue Agency, I'll say, very helpful. Like if you're just up front and say, you know what, this is happening.
When you look at this, and we look, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, what do you hope Inspire Cafe and Inspire Studio has meant to the downtown Medicine Hat core? What is the legacy here that you would love to see?
Well, I really hope that Inspire, because I have that vision of what was here before, and what's happened even in the last 10 years. And I really hope that people think of Inspire as kind of having been a jumping off point to helping other businesses, like you mentioned, bringing the people so that other businesses would. Because I've always felt like if somebody doesn't start to do something, no one else is going to do it. So I hope it inspires other people to realize, our downtown can be a wonderful thing, and continues to be, and will be in the future, so.
Be a part of the ecosystem down here. When you look at the downtown, can you think of any opportunities? I mean, I think of where you are location-wise with, the Monarch Theater and various things. How important has collaboration been for you in your operation at downtown here?
Well, I think collaboration is essential. Like, we initially partnered with the Monarch Theater. I mean, sadly, they're in limbo right now, to do the dinner and a movie. And, a lot of people still call and ask us, what's going on with the Monarch? When's that going to come back again? And I really enjoy that aspect of, like, the downtown art walk was sort of one, like, originally, 12 years ago. I'm trying to think how long we started that. And that was an idea of just, working together and collaborating and get this flow where we're, stronger together than individually, and all that sort of thing. And so I think it's important. absolutely. Because other people can fill in voids maybe that you don't have, or I mean, even in small ways, like when we hear of another little something like a local business, you know, we try to incorporate them into our business, like the King Bagel. So we're going to have their bagels on our breakfast menu. We're going to have Grit City Booze. We're going to have the breweries local and all of those things. And I enjoy that. I think it's super fun, you know, to investigate other places and collaborate with them in small ways or big ways, you know, whatever.
Collaboration can be very fun. So if you were to talk to an entrepreneur who is, you know, new to business, looking to come to Medicine Hat, what is it about Medicine Hat that you just find just to be such a great place to live, work, and play?
Oh, there's so many things about Medicine Hat. I mean, obviously, when you're from a place, you have all, you know, your heartstrings are connected to friends and family and all of that. But what I overwhelmingly hear from people who have an objective view is, you know, just like the history. I think Medicine Hat has such a unique history. And, you know, I think it's exciting, a lot of that, you know, First Nations stories and histories coming more to the forefront, you know, through the Mawassan Center and, you know, the guided tours and things like that, which I think is incredible as well. And I think it's just a beautiful place. It's like that, you know, that cliche of the oasis. You know, it is.
Maureen, been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Trevor.
For your time today. It's always great to chat with you. I know we've had many conversations over the years, and this one's been very fun. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
You bet. Thank you to our podcast sponsor, the Medicine Hat and District Chamber of Commerce, who is fueling the business community in Southeast Alberta through connections, support, and influence. They're driven to shape our community. Their hope is that this podcast will help fuel you and your passion for supporting local first. To learn more about the Medicine Hat District Chamber of Commerce or to watch more episodes of the stories that shape our community, please visit them online at medicinetchamber.com/stories that shape our community. In addition, please follow us on your favorite podcast streaming app so you don't miss any of the unique stories we share, the inspiring guests who share them, and the impact they have had in Southeast Alberta. Stories are all around us. We just need to connect and be able to share them. If you want to be featured on this podcast with a story of your business or organization, or if you know a story that should be shared, please submit a nomination through the Chamber website. Thanks again for watching and listening today. We look forward to sharing more stories with you that help shape our community. I'm Trevor Moore, the host of Stories That Shape Our Community, and I challenge you all, be sure to help shape our community through your very own story.